Would it shock you to know that I'm a big musical guy? I can't remember for sure if I've stated as much, but it's the truth, and I know you probably expected something along those lines because of the video subject, but just shut up, I'm trying to make a point here. For regular viewers, you might be wondering how long it is I've been into musicals to barely speak about any in video, and the answer is, well, all my life. It's never been my main interest per se, that's always been reserved for animation and comics and all that, but I've never not been ready to sit down and watch a good musical, whether in film or in theater. In fact, several of my earliest memories consist of me watching 3 specific musical films relentlessly: Little Shop of Horrors, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and the 1982 film adaptation of the 1977 musical, Annie. Not sure how many people haven't heard of Annie, but just in case, it's the story of an orphan living in the Great Depression with an abusive alcoholic caretaker when she gets whisked away to stay with the billionaire philanthropist Oliver Daddy Warbucks, who takes a liking to Annie after initially just using her for good press and vows to find her missing parents. But as this is happening, Annie's old caretaker Miss Hannigan hatches an idea with her brother Rooster and his girlfriend Lily St. Regis to pose as Annie's parents and get a big cash reward from Warbucks, knowing that Annie's real parents died in a fire. Of course, Annie gets rescued after the plot's revealed, she gets adopted by Daddy Warbucks, and she convinces him to sign on to FDR's New Deal, then coming to a satisfying conclusion. Now, I'm describing the events of the movie because, truth be told, I've never watched the original stage play, but I have listened to all the music, and I've seen the 1999 version, which I've heard is closer to the source material. And hey, Cliff Notes is always my friend in these situations, so from my knowledge, while the film isn't the greatest adaptation of the stage play, taking a few creative liberties, changing the climax, and removing/adding a couple songs, it's still a classic, and an overall feel-good movie that I always have fun revisiting. Plus, the soundtrack is absolutely killer, and the cast is perfect. Fans of the play are more split on whether or not the movie is good, but I'd argue it is, and it's clear the film had a greater impact on pop culture, being the basis for bigger productions to come after, such as the recent live performance from last year, which incorporated elements from the film onto its interpretation, but that's not what I want to talk about. I wouldn't be surprised if this had completely disappeared from public consciousness in the years since it was released, but whether people want to think about its existence or not, in 2014 there was another film adaptation of Annie, but this one was specific for being more different than any previous adaptation before, a modern retelling. And the reason for its existence can all be chalked up to the Karate Kid. No, not that one. I mean the 2008 modern remake where Jaden Smith didn't learn karate but actually learned kung fu. I'm not making this any clearer, am I? Okay, so Jaden Smith's acting career popped off with the release of the Karate Kid remake, starring a big actor, Jackie Chan. So Will Smith thought he'd do the same type of strategy for his daughter Willow, and since she'd been dabbling in music with songs like the classic Whip My Hair, he came up with the idea of casting her in a remake of Annie with Jay-Z set to play Daddy Warbucks. That's why they're both executive producers on the film. And might I add, the idea of Jay-Z possibly singing NYC is sending me right now, but by 2013 when the whole thing was ready to get going, Willow had become too old for the role. So as a replacement, they got the youngest girl ever nominated for an Oscar, Quvenzhané Wallis, for the part, and the rest is history. Or, it would be if anyone cared enough to write it down. Not to say the film did terribly at the box office, it was a modest hit for its level of production and marketing, but reviews were mediocre, and in the end, it faded from public consciousness about as fast as it entered, and when 10-year-old me went to see it, all I came out thinking was, meh, it was okay. And I got curious recently after rewatching the original on Netflix. It was like a small alarm in my head that kept getting louder the more I thought about it, and god damn it, some of my best videos come from that feeling, so we're doing this. Annie 2014 was a shit show of epic proportions, and I'm gonna tell you why, in however many minutes this ends up being. But before that... Hey, do you guys like food? Because I do. In fact, I'd say I couldn't live without it. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the past few years have made people sort of reevaluate how they want to go about getting it. And I've got a great option for you with today's sponsor, HelloFresh. Basically, what they do is get the freshest ingredients possible for great meals to deliver straight to your door less than a week after ordering online. And they've got a massive selection of different boxes for meat lovers, vegetarians, vegans, you name it. There's so much variety, and they can be so specific, it means if you're looking to keep to a certain diet, HelloFresh makes it easy. And it's all packaged in the most convenient way possible, whether you're a pro or have somehow gone your whole life without ever cooking for yourself. They've got all the ingredients you'll need, helpful instructions with pictures, they make the whole process streamlined, and all at prices up to 72% cheaper than restaurants or supermarkets. You're basically throwing money away for more hassle. Personally speaking, I'm super excited to work with this brand, because me and my family have been using it for years. We've always been a household that doesn't get to see each other too often in the day, and so when that box comes, getting in the kitchen and making dishes together instead of eating out or microwaving by ourselves is super fulfilling. If any of that sounds appealing to you, use my link or go to HelloFresh.com and use code POGJSJuly16 for 16 free meals across 7 boxes and 3 gifts. Once you click, my description will live update to count up the purchases, so I'll be watching. Thanks again to HelloFresh for sponsoring, and on with the video.
It's the hard knock life. It's the hard knock life. It's a hard knock life.
So let me pose a question. Considering there's been one attempt so far and it didn't turn out so well, is it possible for Annie to work in modern times? After all, much of the story and atmosphere is themed around the fact it's set in Great Depression era America. Annie is an orphan living in an overpacked home because oftentimes families couldn't provide for just one or two children and would leave them at orphanages in hopes they'd find another home. That or they just died, which was also pretty popular during the Depression. Daddy Warbucks and Miss Hannigan are both products of the time, one being an example of how the previous Gilded Age in America had led to a few corporations with even fewer men at the head of them getting a majority of economic wealth, and the other a sad outcome of lower-class single women needing to go into the workforce begrudgingly, leading to many drinking their sorrows away. And Annie herself is meant to symbolize the hope of the American people during those dour times, being one shining ray of innocence to help get people during those times through the hard stuff, kinda like the original comic Annie is based on was used for during the actual Depression. Not to mention FDR getting the New Deal passed is like an important part of Warbucks' side plot, so that'd have to be straight up abandoned, but nonetheless, I don't think it's impossible to adapt Annie to modern times. I'm not sure why exactly you'd want to do that, other than for superficial appeal to newer audiences getting introduced to the property, but if it has to be done, that doesn't mean it's gotta end up bad. Annie has the potential to work in more than one time period, and that's mostly thanks to its easily transferable themes and characters. A rich guy wants to help a poor girl, she's got a careless caretaker, a couple crooks want to pull off a scam to get a ton of cash. It's all just vague enough to lend itself to more than one setting when handled the right way. You could set the film in the 80s recession, the 2000s housing crisis, hell, just a year back COVID was kicking our economy's ass. America's got more than one situation where it was in financial trouble. Now Annie 2014 doesn't do that, just setting it in modern day New York, but that's okay, so is making her a foster kid. Logically speaking, that syncs up. But god, the film won't allow itself to just be and make that the end of it. That's right, this is more than a musical reboot, it's a pretentiously obnoxious self-referential reboot, which basically means it's a reboot, but at the same time it feels the need to nudge you about it somehow being cooler or hipper than the original, which was cheesy and stupid, as shown by how the film starts with a cameo from the 2012 version of Annie on Broadway to let us know just how silly the original Annie was. Look at that. We're so much cooler. And did I say nudge? Because what I meant to say was, being hit over the head with a chair about how much of a reboot it is.
Our own little orphan Annie.
I'm not singing, I'm asking.
Why are they singing?
People love musicals.
Am I the only one that hates whenever this trope for reboot or reimagined musicals happens? Like, it's kind of condescending to all the fans of the original, saying that what they liked is stupid and people don't actually burst out into song in real life, as if that was something the audience believed in the first place. If you want to do a musical, then fuck it, do a musical. Believe it or not, audiences have this thing called suspension of disbelief, that allows them to get invested in stories and characters, even if them bursting out in song would normally be viewed as weird in real life. Nobody gives a solitary shit about your peanut gallery add-ons, especially if you're still gonna do the musical numbers regardless. This would normally be the moment that I say making fun of your problems doesn't make them go away, but characters in a musical singing isn't a problem in the first place. So the film looks overly self-conscious and doubtful of its own ability to charm an audience without making fun of itself. Self-deprecation can be fun in small bursts, but if you do it too often, I'm gonna start thinking you've got self-esteem issues and need a hug. And also, when musicals do this, I never know what crowd they're trying to appeal to. Is it meant to be endearing to the original fans? Do you want to shoo them off for another demographic that doesn't like musicals while being a musical? Comes off as a bit oxymoronic to the main group you're making the film for in the first place, doesn't it? And being modern doesn't mean shit when there's glaring holes in your story and characters that weren't there to begin with and instead manifested because of those changes. So all you're doing is making yourself look like an idiot. Starting with one of the most obvious flaws, Annie's backstory is changed so we don't know if her parents are living or dead when she gets taken by the pretend ones, but this is the modern age, and Will Stacks, the Daddy Warbucks equivalent, is one of the richest men in the US with cell phones tracking everyone's data. Annie has a regular last name, so it's unlikely she was born to undocumented immigrants, and DNA tests are a thing, so finding her real parents, alive or dead, should be entirely possible, much more than it was in the original, where Hannigan coincidentally knew of her parents' death by getting their stuff afterwards. Somehow though, Annie's parents still turn up no results after a test, and that doesn't make a damn bit of sense. Do her parents not exist? Did she come into existence out of nowhere with a note and last name? There's no explanation, and that's cause in the modern age with Stacky Warbucks' resources, it would be entirely possible to find Annie's family, and I can only assume they made it a dead end without explanation for the reason that otherwise, Annie would want to go home to her actual parents instead of living with Stacky Warbucks like in the original, and it's not that hard of a fix. Really, all they had to say was that the parents were found, but they turned out to be dead or drug addicted or or something. Anything to justify having the same outcome of Annie going to be with her new family. I mean, after all, they want to be updated and different, but within a certain level of differentiation. They wouldn't want to stray too far from the original's plot structure. But then again, if they did apply basic ideas of modern DNA testing, the whole third act wouldn't have happened. And I gotta say, that's the biggest mess in the whole film with the most stretches to fill out the runtime. So seeing as Stacky Warbucks uses tech to try finding Annie's parents, instead of a nationwide search for potential parents to claim her if they have the right knowledge, there's no way for Rooster and Lily to trick Stacky into giving up Annie off the locket alone. Plus there's no quick money involved, so what would crooks claiming to be Annie's parents have to gain? Well, this one guy on Stacky's marketing team thinks that reuniting Annie with her parents will help Stacky get elected as mayor of NYC. That's Stacky's reason for having Annie over in the first place. And though there's no guarantee that'll happen, pretty much being based entirely on speculation, Guy thinks he'll get a lot of money as Stacky's advisor, saying he'll get some undisclosed payout that's only mentioned after becoming plot relevant, but we're never told how much that is, so we can't understand whether or not his stupid, presumptuous plan is based on a significant form of greed or an honestly minor adjustment. How life-changing is the money he'd assumedly get? The average political advisor gets around 70 grand a year, so how big a sum must it be for him to want to pull off this stunt? And speaking of, in this context, it's got just as many discrepancies as the DNA testing. The film had this idea of making Annie a social media star with a shit ton of followers who's noticed by current popular celebrities like Katy Perry! But at the same time, it also wants us to believe Guy's plan of taking her, getting money as Stacky's advisor, then dumping her back in the foster care system is plausible in any way. First off, after Guy tells Hannigan to get her in on the plan, she goes ahead and sets up auditions for possible parents, and it's so popular the line goes out the foster home. So tell me, how did these scam parents find out about the audition? How'd they know where to go? Obviously, Hannigan had to set up something online or through posters. The specifics don't matter, but what does is that she's directly connected to Annie as her old caretaker. And if she's posting open auditions for potential fake parents to trick Stacky, considering, to reiterate, his company tracks everyone's data, wouldn't he find out about the scam quickly and shut it down? Or better yet, since Annie is a superstar now, would it not be just as easy for one of her numerous fans to do the same? Where was Katy Perry to Save Annie movie? Where was she? And okay, let's assume no one does find out about the audition before Guy pulls it and gets professionals. Is it really that easy to put Annie back in the foster care system without anyone noticing? She's still the biggest thing ever right now, and if after she's shown to have been picked up by her parents, she ends up back in a foster home, do you think people aren't gonna notice? Better yet, do you think you'll be able to keep this up for long enough that you get the money from Stacky winning the bid for mayor and such without people noticing Annie isn't anywhere to be found? The kidnappers clearly don't get any instructions on where to take her, and Guy doesn't ask any questions about where they're going, so what was her plan? They don't so much as try to keep the family act up at all after getting Annie away from Stacky Warbucks, and I don't get that. Why wouldn't they try to act like her parents for as long as possible in this case? Or at least until they got somewhere she couldn't easily escape or call for help from. Everything made sense in the original. DNA shit was basically non-existent in the 1930s, so Warbucks tried finding a family that knew about and had the other half of Annie's locket. And Hannigan got it after her parents died, which Annie doesn't know about, so it would follow that Rooster and Lily could pose as her parents since she has never seen them and no one knows what they're like. Plus, they're immediately getting 50 grand out of the deal, which is around $1 million accounting for inflation, so while Annie is still famous, they can get rid of her quick, cash the check, and move to Buenos Aires before they're even caught. The only reason that doesn't work out is due to Annie ripping the check up and Rooster climbing up a suspension bridge in an attempt to kill her, leading to his and Lily's arrest. That's all a logical progression, unlike 2014. And speaking of a logical progression, Annie and Stacky's relationship, in the original Annie, you can feel the slow breaking of boundaries between the two, getting closer while simultaneously setting up Warbucks with Grace, the secretary, who also has a great relationship with Annie and phenomenal on-screen chemistry. Then in the 2014 version, for the first hour, it's like, I don't like you. Well, I don't like you either. I'm the type of man to spit potatoes in poor people's faces because I don't eat with the commoners. Why would I ever like an orphan?
Wait, what? Oh, who cares? I love you now.
And I love you too. Insert montage of the two acting like best friends here. No joke, it really feels that forced. And while individually, Quvenzhané Wallis and Jamie Foxx are both good established actors, together they have no natural chemistry, and they're directed terribly, so their interactions are off too. It's a lot to ask for the film to tally up to the original cast who were so perfect, but if they were gonna remake Annie and make fun of what it used to be, they better back it up by being definitively more impressive. But to be blunt, that's an impossible task, and the film has itself to blame for setting up greater expectations when there's no way it could meet them. You don't even know how extensive the process for determining the perfect Annie was for the 1982 film. They took over 7,000 open auditions, dozens of actors actresses, making sure the Annie they wanted wasn't too tall, too short, had a variety of skills, could interact well with the other actors, etc. Eileen Quinn was pretty much bioengineered for the role, and it shows. She works great with the cast, has a natural charisma, could keep up with the adults and dances, and though I wouldn't consider her the best singer to ever do Annie, I'd argue she's the best actress, has the most heart in her overall performance, and captures the character better than any other adaptation. It's not a knock to Wallace, she does a serviceable job and tries, but there's nothing about her interpretation that stands out one way or another besides the setting she's put in. The one unique trait given to her version is a small subplot about being unable to read, and it's the stupidest thing imaginable. She's 10 years old and goes to school. It's impossible that this kind of issue wouldn't rear its head after long enough. She says in the film she got good at pretending, but that's nowhere near a good explanation, so let's be real. She got this character detail in a vain attempt to have some kind of emotional moment in the film that was otherwise lacking, but by a hilarious miracle, they just made everything worse. Not that she'd measure up to Eileen if by a blue moon occurrence it did. Though I'd be surprised if anyone could do a better job with the character, same for basically all the other named cast in the film. Albert Finney's Daddy Warbucks was hard but caring, and knowing his upbringing, it's understandable why he wouldn't pay any much attention to begin with, being so caught up in his own work, but falls for her charms after long enough. He's a serious businessman, but that doesn't mean he's unwilling to interact with the poor, and you never get the feeling he's completely heartless. Will Stacks is a dick. Enough said. He tracks and takes people's data without it ever being called into question and actually is used for the third act climax. He acts like everyone around him is a virus for the crime of poverty, and Jamie Foxx isn't a good fit for the role. He plays tough guys and hardened criminals. I can't remember a time where he played a character that could hit that sweet spot between occasionally soft but stern at the same time in the way Warbucks needs to be. And Cameron Diaz as Miss Hannigan, my god. Wanna know a fun fact? Cameron Diaz is tone deaf. And for those of you who haven't taken a Music 101 course, that means she couldn't sing if her life depended on it. And in a movie where she plays a character that sings on more than one occasion, that'd be a smidgen of a problem. I'll talk more about the film's solution for that later, but spoiler alert, it doesn't save her from having such an equally tone-deaf performance. Miss Hannigan is one of those characters where whether she's portrayed as sympathetic or evil, she has to have an absolutely massive personality, and more than Eileen Quinn, I can without a doubt say that there will for sure, not under any condition, be a more suitable Miss Hannigan than Carol Burnett. Theoretically, Miss Hannigan should be thought of as despicable from the start of the film, a character you love to hate. But Carol Burnett does such an amazing job portraying Hannigan as a desperate, lonely, sassy drunk that you can't help but love and feel sorry for her. She gives the role so much personality, and that makes Hannigan's redemption at the end of the movie natural. All Cameron Diaz brings is the sadness, though it's probably not for the reason she was hoping. This version of Hannigan, like Annie, also has an added side plot about being in CNC Music Factory, but it goes nowhere. Though funnily enough, like Diaz in the film, CNC Music Factory had a controversy in the 90s for lip syncing, but I don't think the movie's so self-aware it could intentionally make that connection. And it's not worth mentioning the guy that's supposed to be a replacement for Rooster. He's so much of a nobody that his name is actually Guy, and we should all know, a mere man could not so much as bask in the light of the glory that is Tim Curry. Or Bernadette Peters for that matter, who doesn't have an equivalent at all. Just like the trash fire this movie calls a soundtrack.
Little girls, night and day, I eat, sleep, and breathe them.
I don't get it. The original films and the stage musical both have great soundtracks full of absolute bops and iconic numbers, so why? Why would you change it? I don't care how much you want to appeal to a newer audience. The often vaudeville-inspired jazzy songs and sequences associated needed no update, and yet, you present me with this. Filth! I don't like it! Where do I start? I guess by listing off all the songs that straight up aren't in the film. Though Stacky Warbucks and Annie go to see a Twilight parody in 2014, they do not sing Let's Go to the Movies or NYC, let alone any of the songs cut from the play for the 1982 film. Seeing as Miss Hannigan and Stacky don't get an extended interaction in the film, nor do Sandy and Annie, there's no Sign, Dumb Dog, or Sandy. Other than Grace, all of the Warbucks entourage is gone, so say bon voyage to We Got Annie. You're Never Fully Dressed Without a Smile is technically there in the background, but it's an unrecognizable cover by Sia that sounds nothing like it. If you're counting at home, that's 5, technically 6 songs from the film completely removed, and You're Never Fully Dressed Without a Smile isn't the only one that's been drastically changed from what it used to be. Little Girls has the same chorus, but otherwise it's another song entirely. At one point it almost sounds like the original number, but then it devolves into generic pop song shit that's indistinguishable from anything else, and Cameron Diaz's performance doesn't help. I mentioned she has a solution for being tone deaf, and that was to dub over her with someone who knows how to sing. And you can pinpoint the exact moment it goes from her to the actual singer.
Little girls, locked in a cage with all the rats I
It's kinda funny, I'm not gonna lie. Almost as tragically funny as this being Diaz's last performance before retiring from acting, leading to many thinking she was so embarrassed by this that she quit, and I'd probably do that too if this were me. No wonder she got nominated at the Razzies for Worst Supporting Actress, and I know she totally got snubbed by Megan Fox for TMNT. At least Annie 2014 got the honor of winning the Worst Reboot category, and Diaz made up for it by getting Worst Actress that same year. Big night for the film, that's for sure. But back to the music, it still sucks. And somehow Little Girls isn't the worst offender either. That honor goes to Easy Street, which has been butchered beyond all belief. It was already shortened in the original film for time, but that had the combined charisma of Peters, Curry, and Burnett to make it one of the best in the whole film, and the play version is great too. But same as Little Girls, the songwriters changed it up to the point that the one area it's comparatively similar to is the chorus, so I have to ask, if you're gonna change it that much, why not let it be a new song? Don't slap on the label of Little Girls or Easy Street to make it potentially more tolerable for the fans of the original. You're probably just gonna piss them off. You've already got a couple new generic songs in here that no one's gonna remember. What's two more on the pile? It's clear that in terms of old songs they wanted to modernize, the crew was at best just willing to keep 3 songs mostly the same. Maybe Hard Knock Life and Tomorrow. Gee, I wonder what those have in common. Is it perhaps that they're the most recognizable songs in the film? And so despite going so far with the others to make them different, you want to keep these 3 relatively normal, thinking that otherwise people would finally take the hint and leave knowing there was nothing for them to get out of the film? Well, if that is the case, too bad it didn't work, cause these numbers are all just as soulless. You see, one of the many charming aspects of Annie was its roughness and willingness to be imperfect. You'd kinda have to be with such a young main cast. It's nearly unthinkable to find so many good actors and actresses at that age, so it won't be perfect by any stretch. But that sorta helps in grounding everything. Specifically, maybe Hard Knock Life and Tomorrow are all songs sung solely by children as anthems or melodies whenever they're feeling down. So not having every character in the exact right pitch or tone all the time makes it feel real without ever becoming annoying or displeasing to listen to. But Annie 2014 misses that detail and tries to fix all the small imperfections of their child actors' performances by pitch correcting them, and it goes too far in the other direction, sounding overproduced, fake, and not like actual children at all. I would compare Wallace's singing to another Annie if possible, but her voice is so hidden under all that autotune I can't tell for sure what she would sound like normally. Come on, these are kids! Half the charm of their singing is to pull off that sound and inflection nobody but kids can do, so leave their imperfections in. How hard is that? You literally don't have to change anything! The worst one has to be Maybe, though, without question. The original is this slow, longing, emotional opening number, and much of that comes down to how stripped away it is compared to every other song in the film. It's slow, has just a few instruments, and Annie is the only one to sing. Anything more wouldn't feel right, and it doesn't. Especially when these 11-year-olds start singing as if they're 25. Stop the cap, for Christ's sake.
Maybe far away.
So that's Annie 2014, a film that wanted to capitalize off an existing property and act like it was something new at the same time instead of embracing what it should have been. A fun, campy, heartfelt story with a timeless narrative told through the eyes of a modern setting. But if you look at the end product, there's no indication they were going for that approach, and it cements the truth that they completely missed the point of what Annie, both as a property and as a character, meant to people. It modernized the setting and songs to be hip and cool, but that made them more dated and unappealing to fans and new viewers alike. They switched up character relationships and motives in hopes of making deeper connections and emotional moments. But it opened up holes in the world's logic and has nothing to say on the issues it wants to present, so the emotions are even faker than ever before. It brought in big names thinking that'd be enough to make up for a script that even the original cast would have trouble working with, but it ended up highlighting why they don't work and shouldn't have been cast in those roles. Everything it did to try differentiating itself from other adaptations only made it worse. And the film's stuck-up attitude, acting like it's better than every other version, takes away any sympathy you could give it. The Emperor's naked, and I can't stand to look at it any longer. Go home, movie. I'm not serving any more drinks. With that said, I'd like to say thank you for watching. Now get out of here. I'm gonna take a nap.